people have discovered themselves that there's a need in the market for this, and they're really coming to us and saying, help us get there. We've had a lot of talks about outsourcing and white labeling through this conference, which we'll talk about in a minute. But in general, everybody is very, very interested. And for some reason, we've had our calendar booked, for the whole time we're sitting there. There are people coming, and there's a line of people waiting to talk to us. I come from the remittance industry, and the pain points in this industry have always been that you have an agent network to manage. You have money to collect, which is risky. You have to educate them. You have to provide them tools, and they have to go market to the consumer. And the consumer is yours for this payroll period, and next payroll period, somebody has a better FX rate and they go somewhere else. True. And then you're spending money to reacquire them again, or you have to reduce your prices. It's a never-ending circle, and it's expensive to do business that way. So very quickly, I think people are realizing that, well, if I can make this consumer my permanent customer through a banking app, and I can provide all these services and make money other ways, I can also make the money transfer cheaper while I'm earning revenue with other products, and I can have a happier customer because I'm providing more services. Critically, a bank account, the ability to get maybe advances or microloans, getting your paycheck quickly, being able to load money, having a card to spend. We have a 5% cashback product. Wow. So really, there's a lot of value. Yeah. And our clients, in this case would be the remittance company, they get all these, in one contract, one package, and we make it really simple. And so people are loving this. My concern now is how fast we can launch.
I thought about that, and when you said about redefining the ecosystem of companies within, it's something very important. And how fast we should go, how fast we can respond, it is one of the greatest questions. And I think it's interesting because our industry is growing, it's evolving, it's changing, and the everlasting changes are the ones that we embrace as we improve everything that we do. And talking about those changes, Nabil, I think something very nice is that you've been one of the most active panelists and moderators of this edition of CrossTech World. So you've been participating in courses, you've been also participating as a panelist and as a moderator. So let's talk a little bit about that experience, as one of the things that we look for in our conferences is knowledge, and it's sharing the knowledge as we grow together. So the first session was day one, and we had the chance to see you on the third session of the Digital Way course. And this is the first time that we have this course. There's a lot coming for everyone there, and we're gonna have a series of sessions, virtual sessions, as we embrace digitalization, as we embrace change and innovation within our companies. So let us know about that third session, which you shared the floor with Hugo, with Fredo Pen from Neofie, and Alberto Guerra from Uniteller.
Yeah, we had actually a lot of fun doing this session. So, the overused term, but the only constant is change. And in this business, it's very true. And I think it's accelerating. You'll hear everybody saying the same thing. With COVID, I think the move toward digitization has accelerated tremendously because people did not want to do things in person. And frankly, this was kind of the opening of Pandora's box, because people now realize that I can do this without having to go there. The first big revelation was office time, yes. Right? Or we can work actually without having to go to the office. Yes, and then we can meet clients and even sign clients without having to travel. Well, it was the same for the money transfer industry too. People migrated towards digital ways of doing money transfer. And quite a few successful companies here have launched their money transfer apps, and it works well. But again, you're still in the mono product. So really, this session was to kind of explore all the digitization happening in the industry, who's doing what, how are we converting our businesses from kind of legacy to the digital world. How do these two pieces coexist? And really the big message, I think, to the audience was that you have to be there. If you're not there, you're probably going to lose out over time. And sometimes, like everything else, it's exponential. It starts very slowly, and then all of a sudden, it goes very quickly, and you're out of business. And you don't know what happened. Yes, and that happens like with every large industry you can think of. So it's a phenomenon that's real. It's here. It's happening. Luckily, especially if you walk around this conference now and you see a lot of the exhibitors and the sponsors, the tools are there to help the companies digitize. And another part of the debate and the fear was, okay, the tools are there, but I don't own them. So I am outsourcing part of my business, or I'm white labeling part of my business. And there's this anxiety around doing that because you feel like you're losing control of your customers. And it's entirely the opposite. And in a sense, the analogy that I made in that first talk is we've been outsourcing all of our lives. You know, nobody builds an agent network physically by setting up stores and renting them and then hiring people and putting them in those stores. Yes, there are branches, but you don't even put the building up. Somebody else put the building. So you're outsourcing your building, you're outsourcing your office space, you're outsourcing your sending network to stores in the US. You are outsourcing your receive network to banks and other payers in the receiving country. Your system is probably sitting on some server in the cloud hosted by Amazon or Microsoft or somebody else. So you are outsourcing today. And they're essential components of the business. You know, if Windows one day decided to turn off their operating system, I don't know how you can operate, right? But we trust it, and it works, and it's never been a problem. So first part of it is let's reduce that anxiety of I'm losing control, I'm outsourcing. Sure. And then contractually, you can cover yourself, but because obviously you can state who the customer ownership belongs to in your system, none of the outsourcers are going to ever argue that you don't own your customer. And they're going to help you actually make your customer more happy, more loyal, and earn more revenue for that customer. But you can also have a transition service agreement that says, if I wish to stop my relationship with outsourcer A and move to outsourcer B, then you, outsourcer A, are obligated to help me transition. And you put that in the contract, and now you have a plan A and plan B and a backup of a backup. Yeah. So I think I could see the faces in the room. People were like, well, that's true. We've always been doing that. And it's actually less scary now that we think about it. And the other big aspect is what I mentioned earlier is the vendors that you need and the partners that you need are in the room. So all they had to do is turn around and say, well, I need this type of service or this type of technology, and they could find 1 or 2 or 3 people doing that type of service that they could partner with. And I think in the last conference, this conference was a little more accentuated, there's been a lot more of that. This is an industry that traditionally has been very possessive of their business models, which is very common actually. Nobody has a special secret, to be honest. And I've been in this business 15 years. There's no really magic recipe. Everybody does almost the same thing. But everybody was very protective. They didn't want to share. They didn't want to communicate. They didn't want to partner. And in the last probably 5 years in general, on the receive network side where you have aggregators, that changed. And then now it's starting to change very quickly in the US, where people are saying, well, I don't have to build a digital channel, I can partner with somebody. I can have somebody build me an app. I can have somebody do a service. And I think that's great because it's going to help this industry migrate into the digital age seamlessly, powerfully, and quickly.
Great. One of the things that I would really like to highlight of this great explanation of what happened during that session, and it's a great summary. The session went on for 45 minutes. But that was the last one. I mean, it went from very good time, and we had 3 sessions that covered all of that process, stepping out of our comfort zones in the search for the benefit of our client, so the end user feel that it's faster, that it's safer. It's something that we all embrace to do. And I think working through that digitalization area, it's something that it's here, and we need to keep the pace of. So that was the first session, and then day 2 came along, and we had some regional trends. I was amazed to see how amazing things are happening within each of the different regions. And you were the one leading the conversation for Latin America and the Caribbean. You had great panelists, so let's talk to the audience and walk them through what happened during that session and the different topics. You had perspectives from Brazil, we had some perspective from different parts of Latin America that are very strong, in which they have like very different aspects within their society and the community that make them different, right? So let's share with the audience what happened during that session.
Yeah, we actually had great leaders in the industry from Brazil, Colombia, and Mexico, but really they are pan-regional people who know the business across the entire region. You know, the common theme, obviously, again, was digitization, because there's wallets launching all over Latin America and the Caribbean. There's integration of services happening. But I think what was more of a surprise is the extent to which it's happening. And if you saw one of the presentations early on was done by Visa, where they said they surveyed 2,700 consumers, and depending on the country, anywhere between 50 to 60% prefer digital methods than using cash. And to me, that was a big shift. I expected to hear 30%, 20%, and it's much deeper than anybody's realizing. And I think more people are getting either bankerized or bankerized through fintech, or pseudo-bankerized, if you will, through that. And if they don't have a bank account, they're holding a wallet or some way of doing business digitally. And I think what's common to humanity nowadays, 7 billion people, everybody has a cell phone, sometimes two. And they're doing,
True.
I mean, if you see just your timer on the system, that how much time you spend on your phone per day, it's hours and hours and hours and hours. I don't even dare to look at mine. So they want to interact that way. That's their preferred method now, and they're making it clear to the providers. So that was a first big trend. And I think the second big trend was also the prevalence of non-traditional directions in money movement. So we always thought about the remittance industry as this is somebody who comes to work in the US or Canada or Western Europe, and they send money back to Latin America, Caribbean in this case, but the rest of the world as well. And what was different this time is to hear how many other directions are emerging. So people obviously want to send money inter and intra-country, but they also want to buy things in the US. So now they have to pay Amazon or another vendor. And so now you have a consumer to business need to send money outside. And then you have a business to business need because of import-export in both directions. So that's emerging too. And then you have consumer to consumer within a country and within a region. And then you have bill payment. And people making payments on their houses. They own a vacation house in Brazil, or they have bills in Brazil. And so it is becoming a multi-directional type of matrix where these companies are starting to provide a lot of payment services in every direction possible, and the same company is doing it in a kind of both way, inbound, outbound, and now sideways within the country, which is great because there's obviously a pent-up demand, and the payment systems weren't there, and fintechs have stepped in and taken over and provided great rails. Even in the US, I mean, we think about US as a very advanced country, but essentially their financial systems are a little bit backwards. Wow. And there are companies in the US today that enable bill payment between company and company. I mean, you're still in this country, you have a vendor, they will send you an invoice, and that will take how many days, and usually it's at the end of the month. You get the invoice, you're going to put it in your accounting department, they're going to take 30 days to pay it, sometimes 60 if they don't want to stress their cash too much, and now it's a 90-day process, and they'll send you a check. I mean, this is like 1950 technology. And that's evolved, so there are companies now doing direct invoice presentment and bill payment, and it's instant, and it changed the treasury management, and it has so many benefits. But the funny part is, I think the Latin America Caribbean region is leapfrogging this age-old technology and going straight to now the digital means and doing those new directions in a modern way from the onset, which is really exciting.
I completely agree, and I think that those paradigms, right, of thinking, and as the market gets more complex and more complex, we bring different elements and different players within our industry. You talked about the fintech, and we're evolving all together. So I think that's something interesting. It's an amazing time to not only to be part of the conference overall, because we are discussing those topics. We had some other different panels that Nabil had the chance to moderate, but I'm just gonna stop in which one that was very popular, and that was for our day 3. It happened today, earlier, and you joined Hugo, again, Alberto Guerra from Uniteller, and Alex Pereira. And I think that was something very interesting because people were looking forward to that conversation. So briefly, let's just talk of the points what you think could conclude or could overall give the final message on white labels, right? We talked about it, and it was something that everyone would want to hear and learn.
Right, so, first question was how do you define white label? Well, I mean, it is what it says. You're getting a product or a software that has no label, and you put your label on it, so it looks like yours. And I mean, I think there's variations in that offering. What we call a very strict white label is nobody knows who the actual provider is, and the owner of the customer and the owner of the brand is the one that appears to be the provider. And even if you grew up as an auditor and you start looking into the product and peeling the onion, you really can't see the name of who is behind it. So this is one way of doing it, and that there's a lot of products that exist that way. And the other one, which is we've been doing forever and really not realizing, is kind of the powered by Intel concept, where it is white label, it is your brand, so it's an Lenovo computer, but it's powered by Intel, and the chip inside is Intel. And that is actually also can be beneficial because, for example, let's say in our case, Neobank, right? Our bank accounts are held in a US banking institution. It's FDIC insured, it's federally chartered. It's monitored, compliant, audited, and it gives the consumer a lot of security. So it really gives you a lot more credibility in the face of the consumer, in the eyes of the consumer, than being a fintech that nobody knows, and now I'm going to trust you with thousands of dollars of my hard-earned cash to hold it, and I don't know where the money is. It's in the cloud somewhere, with little zeros and ones. So in some cases, it's beneficial because then the brand is supporting, or it's legally required in other cases where, well, I can't issue a U.S. bank account. I have to say it's being held at a certain bank. Same thing with MSBs, right? If you're not the MSB licensee, you have to show who is the MSB licensees. But that's also fine. It does not dilute the power of the company that is recipient of the white label service, because they still own the customers. The contracts will say that they own the customers. They own the brand, which is the most important part of the entire equation. People trust that brand. They bought a Lenovo computer. They didn't buy it because it has an Intel chip inside. And frankly, Intel is a bunch of other chips. So I don't think it deters from it. And so, again, there was a little bit of anxiety around that concept, and we said, no, look, you've been doing it forever. You white label your servers because they sit on Amazon cloud, and it's not yours, is it? Right. So it's just, again, an invitation for people to partner up, and we kind of explained. I went through the list of sponsors, which is, actually it's not this board, but the other boards that are outside. I'm like, they white label, they white label, they white label, they white label, and they provide white label, and they provide label. So it's there, it's happening. And for people who had a little, again, anxiety around, well, I have to build it, and if I don't build it, then I don't have control. Like, no, you can mechanically, in your agreements, in your planning, you can have all the controls that you want. And frankly, the world has been operating for a long time that way, and it's kind of time to join.
No, clearly, and actually that's something that we all embrace: change, innovation, and to step out of comfort zones will be great. Nabil, it's been such a great conversation. Thank you for teaching us so much, and we expect to be more in contact with everything that Neofie is doing as it's lead the market and lead all of the different strategies to help everyone in our organization to grow. So join us, and if you want to see more about Nabil, please look into our library of videos and watch his panel.